Way back in issue 5 of Fantastic Four Volume 3, author Chris Claremont seeded an idea. When visiting a scientific symposium, Reed Richards and his old friend Alyssa Moy confirmed that something was wrong with the very fabric of reality. This idea was next brought up in issue 10, where it was revealed that Roma, the guardian of the Omniverse, gave Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, a crystal containing data on this problem, identified solely as a chaos storm. But Reed was unable to use the data as his genius had been stolen by the villain named Crucible. The Fantastic Four managed to defeat him, but whether Reed ever got his genius back or not was kind of never addressed. The Fantastic Four then spent several issues bouncing through time and the negative zone, so they understandably didn't have the time or resources to do much else. When they returned to their proper reality, the addition of Marvel Girl to their cast, or Valeria Von Doom, who claims to be the future daughter of the Invisible Woman and Dr. Doom, became their main focus. Only a throwaway scene in issue 23 addressed the storm again. In it, young Franklin Richards and his father, Reed, watched their friend Namorita be temporarily replaced by an alternate version of herself. It only lasted for a second, but the implication was clear. The Chaos Storm was moving closer, and Earth was beginning to feel its effects. This all finally came to a head in Fantastic Four issue 24. The initial wave of the storm swept over the Four and their friends, transforming New York City into its alternate selves, but only briefly. The heroes then scrambled for an answer, calling their allies, running potential solutions, and preparing for what might be the end of everything. They had 4 days left to save the world, maybe to save all of existence. But then something happened. Unknown to the Fantastic Four, their old foe Dr. Doom had ended up back on the Reborn Earth, where they had all spent roughly a year of their lives living. Upon arriving there, Doom found the world in chaos as a banished celestial called the Apostate pulled at its metaphorical legs like a child would a fly. Formulating a plan and allying with those necessary to pull it off, Doom managed to teleport the Reborn Earth out of the pocket dimension that housed it. Now, in the 616 reality proper, the Reborn Earth landed on the other side of the sun from Earth Classic. Doing so was like dropping a massive stone into a pond, though. The Chaos Storm accelerated, sweeping towards Earth faster than expected. The Fantastic Four had just enough time to load Franklin, his dog, named Puppy, and his guardian, Caldonia, into a rocket and send him someplace safe before it hit. A massive tidal wave hung over the city of Manhattan, preparing to wash away everything that the Fantastic Four had ever known. Reed had failed to solve this problem, but he's in luck, because a man who is just as smart, or maybe smarter, is on his way back to his home planet. Whether it will be as Earth's savior or as its doom is the real question. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown, episode 12.21, When Worlds Collide. Issue 25 of Fantastic Four was published in January of 2000, and it was written by Chris Claremont, penciled by Salvador Larroca, inked by Art Thibaert and Mark Pennington, and it was colored by Liquid. It is 38 pages of glorious, well-rendered, beautifully colored pages. Good God, is it nice to see this artwork again. Mwah, mwah, baby. Oh, baby, I love you. As the massive tidal wave of reality begins to fall over New York, the Fantastic Four, plus Valeria, can do little about it but stare. Sue wishes goodbye to her son, while Ben wishes the love of his life, Alicia Masters, a peaceful rest. Johnny rails against the injustice of this end, while Valeria just thinks it's cool. Only Reed, and of course only Reed, questions the lack of an atmospheric shockwave before the water itself. As the wave begins to crash down, though, a massive craft punches through it. This baby is enormous, and Valeria is glad to see it. She would recognize her father's flagship anywhere. Naturally, the Fantastic Four aren't thrilled by this development. The last time that they saw this ship, Doom had tried to kidnap Franklin on their journey home from the Reborn Earth. Johnny shouts that this wave must be Doom's fault. If he can't conquer the world, then he must be settling for destroying it. Valeria assures him, she assures all of them, that that can't be true. She knows that they've fought before, but her father can only be here to help. Valeria begins to type on her gauntlets, accessing the ship's teleporter. In fact, she'll prove that her father means well by getting them all on board for a nice personal chat. But wait, the teleporter, it only takes Valeria. She reaches out for Ben, but vanishes in a purple light. And then the wave falls upon the Fantastic Four. Years of training, experience, and trust kick in. Mr. Fantastic grabs Ben and Johnny, keeping them from being separated, while Sue uses her force field to capture enough air for a bubble of oxygen. She grabs the boys and merges all of them into her bubble. They sputter and cough some water out, but they are all alive, although some of them are confused. Ben sees that there are still birds in mid-flight, just hanging in the water as if they were hanging in mid-air. Down below on the streets of New York, Reed sees people riding motorcycles and smoking cigars. They're still standing upright, and smoke still wafts from those cigars. But then suddenly the group is surfacing, Sue's force field bubble becoming a force field raft. Johnny immediately lights up, eager to move, and he scans the area. Sure enough, the entirety of the city is flooded. Only the tops of the tallest buildings are visible above the surface. Reed immediately begins processing everything that just happened, while Susan reels. How could Doom hate the Fantastic Four this much? He tried to steal Franklin, now he has stolen Valeria? No matter what Valeria might say her name is, Sue says that she is no child of Doom's, except maybe as an example of who Victor could have been. She is going to rescue that girl, and God help Doom if he's harmed her. Reed finally notices Sue monologuing all of this, and he moves to comfort her, asking if she's okay. She uses her force field to push him away in anger. What, is he blind? Did he not just watch a whole city die? And Doom took her daughter. He took Valeria. Ben moves in and hugs Sue, assuring her that they'll get Valeria back. Sue finds it hard to be comforted by words as they float above a city of the dead. But they ain't dead, Ben replies. At first, Sue is confused. She was so busy saving their lives that she didn't see what Ben and Reed saw underwater. Reed explains that this flooding has happened in space, but not yet in time. The Fantastic Four are caught in the eye of the chaos storm now, so they aren't frozen in place. Once the storm passes, though, they and the city will be subjected to the changes in their reality. He also guesses, based on seeing Doom's ship, that the world that is merging with theirs might be the Reborn Earth. Ben points out that if they're the only ones not frozen, then they ain't got any backup coming. They're on their own. Sue scoffs. What else is new? Only the Fantastic Four can stop this threat. And they have to. Claremont opens this issue exactly where the previous issue left off, which is great, because a wave towering over New York City is a great cliffhanger. On the one hand, this works exactly how you would expect it to, and the city is flooded. On the other hand, we get this fairly questionable explanation about its nature. I don't really buy the idea that Doom and the Fantastic Four are unaffected by the storm because they are in its eye. The eye of a storm is a localized physical effect, and everyone inside of it is affected. And the Chaos Storm's eye is clearly a wide area, as it includes Doom's ship, which will later be told is nearly the size of Manhattan Island. which means that the Eye of the Storm is big enough to encompass all of Manhattan, but Manhattan itself is still clearly affected by the storm. Basically, those people that we see frozen underwater should have been affected by the water like the Fantastic Four were. Now, to be fair, we are dealing with a fairly unrealistic, nonsensical idea like that of a chaos storm, so applying any kind of rules to it is fairly pointless. Plus, even if there were people active in the storm, they would probably be smashed or drowned in seconds. The Fantastic Four wouldn't have even had time to find them, much less save them. Also, just from a story perspective, this comic is called The Fantastic Four, not The Fantastic Four and Bruno from accounting and his taxi driver who happened to be passing by and were also caught in the eye of the chaos storm. Claremont is trying to isolate the effects of the storm in order to explain why the stakes are so high and why the Fantastic Four are the only superheroes that can respond to it. And that idea works, even if the rest of the idea is on some pretty weak legs. We've also got Reed's theory that the Reborn Earth is merging with Earth Classic, but Claremont told us in Heroes Reborn Doom that the Reborn Earth landed on the opposite side of the sun. Yes, it is in reality, but it wasn't ever in danger of merging with Earth. That's just contradictory storytelling. That's just bad. That said, the basic structure and events of this work. Claremont recaps the threat that the storm presents, the danger of a man like Dr. Doom, and how seriously the Fantastic Four are taking this threat. Removing Valeria also means that the Fantastic Four have no devil's advocate for Doom now. Any actions that the Fantastic Four take, they are going to be acting on their history with Doom, not hers. Claremont also sets up the ticking clock of the two Earths merging and killing billions of people, which are some great stakes. We also get to see Sue's reaction to Valeria disappearing, indicating how much Valeria has grown on her in the time that they've been together. Sue once hated the very idea of Valeria, but now she's swearing to rescue her. I also appreciate Reed's lack of an emotional response to the disaster around him. That moment with Sue, where she's reeling from all the death and he just doesn't get it at all, is great. As the analytical mind of the Fantastic Four, Reed has already moved on, while Sue, as the emotional heart of the team, is still caught in the moment. Ben comforting Sue is sweet as well. All of her anger was directed at Reed, but Ben is one of her oldest friends. So while the more emotional, character-based work here is kind of stiff, just too reliant on wordy speeches and expositional dialogue, it is there and it is in character, and that stuff's not that bad. So the Fantastic Four head after Doom's ship. While on Doom's ship, Valeria leaps from the teleporter like Batman dropping from the ceiling at a supervillain, and while she's doing so, she's headed right for Lancer. Valeria shouts as she beams in, upset about the Fantastic Four getting left behind and possibly, dying, but she does recognize Lancer and greets the woman cheerfully. This confuses Lancer, who has never met Valeria before. She asks who the hell she is, and how was she able to get control of the teleporter. Valeria then explains that she is the heir of Doom, and that she has known Lancer all of her life, and that the Fantastic Four might still be dying, so perhaps they could get a move on saving them, and by extension, maybe they can save the whole world? A man's voice, tinged with a metallic tone, orders Valeria to be silent. Only one voice issues commands on this ship, and that voice belongs to Victor Von Doom. Valeria cries out, "Daddy!" and rushes to hug her father. Expecting a threat, though, Doom's force field bounces Valeria back, slamming her against the ship's hull. She doesn't cry out in pain, though. She won't show weakness in front of her father. Doom stands over her. Why does she wear that armor and cloak, and then insult them by wearing clothing styled after the Fantastic Four? Valeria pushes herself onto her feet. She wears the Four because they're her friends, and she wears the rest because she is Doom. The armored man stares at her. Is she now? And then he laughs. Well, that's a step up from killing her, so, I'll take it, I guess. A burst of heat and fire punches up through the floor, separating Doom and Lancer. The Fantastic Four climb aboard Doom's ship, and they're all like, "Doom, you're an evil jerk!" And Doom is like, "I'm not evil, and you're stupid, and we'll always be enemies, you idiots. Not that I'm going to attack you now, but you're stupid." And then Reed is like, "Well, we've got a problem then." And he folds his arms, and everyone is all tough and imposing. Lancer and Valeria try to appeal to both sides' better halves. Like, you guys know that Earth is in real danger right now, yeah? But the Fantastic Four do not trust Dr. Doom. And Dr. Doom only trusts Dr. Doom. And, for now at least, his allies. Dr. Doom then introduces Technarchs, Shakti, Divinity, and Dorma. He also boasts about having an army held in his ship. Clearly, the upper hand here is his. Ben and Reed recognize Dorma at least, who is dead on their Earth. For Reed, this confirms his theory that this is the Reborn Earth merging in, and he asks if Doom is to blame for moving the other planet into the 616 reality. Doom confirms that yes, that was due to his actions, but when asked why he did it, he refuses to answer further. He then tells the Fantastic Four to GTFO of his ship. Johnny, hot-headed as ever, isn't willing to go without a fight. He flames on, and seeing the threat, Doom's commanders begin to charge in for a fight. While they're gearing up, Valeria tries to get them to stop. She begs that her father stop all of this stupidity. Doom, however, picks up on his last line of questioning from earlier. Who is she? Valeria explains her whole deal, that she's his daughter from the future, her mom is Sue Storm Richards. You guys know all of this. You've been listening to every episode of the podcast intently, I'm sure. So, Doom challenges her loyalty. If she is the child of Doom, then why is she allied with the Fantastic Four? Valeria pauses at that. Well, like, they're her family too. Like, that's her mom. And the rest are her friends, you know? Doom turns away from her. Then what is he? Valeria apologizes for her disloyalty, but Lancer is ordered to remove her. Dr. Doom needs to finish this matter. Now he tells his commanders to attack the Fantastic Four. We get a brawl over the next few pages that is actually pretty good. The Fantastic Four start with the upper hand thanks to their years of training and teamwork. They're just used to working as a unit. The commanders don't have that. They're all fighting as individuals. But they are all cunning fighters in their own right, and then they begin to gain the upper hand, surprising the Fantastic Four with their powers. The Fantastic Four then start to pull ahead again, adjusting their tactics to the way that the commanders are now fighting. But then the entire ship pitches to the side. Outside, we're shown Doom's craft caught between the thumb and two fingers of a giant celestial. Even with the ship being the size of Manhattan Island, it is still small compared to the dreaming celestial. Then it crushes it, like a bug. Having spent the opening of the issue establishing the history and rivalry of the Fantastic Four and Dr. Doom, Claremont then needs to build on it. So we get the commanders introduced, and we get to see them take on the Fantastic Four. And they actually do pretty well. It's easy to throw villains at the Fantastic Four, but it is hard to throw villains at the Fantastic Four and have them not be chumps. But Claremont makes the battle ebb and flow, a decently rare thing in a comic book fight scene. I mean, this was only like 3 pages of fighting, and it still feels like there's enough happening that the battle is actually shifting between the two groups. That's super nice. And the various characters all get moments to shine, like Mr. Fantastic wraps Dorma up in his body. There's no way that saying that won't be creepy. And she breaks free thanks to her enhanced strength. But what enhanced strength, you might be asking? Dorma just looks like a regular woman, just with, blue skin and Atlantean armor on. Well, Dorma explains that she grew up and trained at the bottom of the ocean, with hundreds of miles of water pressure pushing down on her. She might look like a normal, fit woman, but she can go toe-to-toe with the Thing easily. That is a great use of her background to surprise both the audience and the Fantastic Four, so kudos there. We also get a bit of new information regarding Technarchs. When Doom introduces us to, he calls it the Prime Node of Westchester, head of a group of techno-organic mutants calling themselves the Host. Westchester, New York, is famous for being the home of the X-Men, indicating that the Technarchs has probably consumed and taken over that area. Remember the origin for Kid Colt back in Young Allies? When an alien crashed on Earth in the 616 reality and it led to a comic book storyline, but then in the Reborn Earth, those characters didn't exist to interact with that alien, so that story didn't happen? Same deal here. You see, back in New Mutants issue 18, a techno-organic alien called Warlock, from a race called the Technarchy, landed in Westchester, near Xavier's mansion. He was found and befriended by the New Mutants, and eventually went on to become a welcome member of the team. On the Reborn Earth, though, the X-Men and New Mutants didn't exist, and so Warlock began to affect the general area, leading to the creation of Technarchs. Now, Claremont does specifically state that Technarchs is in charge of a group of techno-organic mutants, and it's hard to tell if he is referring to what we think of as a Marvel Universe mutant, which is someone born with an X gene who then displays amazing mutant abilities, or if he is just referring to a mutant as a life form that takes a strange life path. That is a neat exploration of Marvel history, even if it does have the same conceptual problems that Kid Colt and the Remnants did, but apparently the authors are all content to just make no swearing shit up, so whatever. If they don't care, I don't care either. We also get to see the next step in Valeria's character story, her having to choose between her father and her newfound family. That is some great drama, but it doesn't really get to climax at all yet. The whole idea behind creating a character with ties to both sides of the situation would either be to force the two sides to accept that bond that they now have in common, i.e. that character, or force that character to choose between the two sides. But Valeria choosing to side with her father, which she does do, doesn't affect anything. She doesn't fight against the Fantastic Four, she doesn't give the commanders any useful intel on the Fantastic Four that allows them to win the fight. Like, this is pointless. Even if Valeria had sided with the Fantastic Four, there would have been no change here. They were going to win that fight. Although I guess the real crux here is that Valeria doesn't have a relationship with a man who is not yet her father. That's one of the things that actually annoys me the most here, and it bothered me back when Valeria was trying to have Sue be her mom, and Sue was like, "I'm not your mom, kid, I never gave birth to you, you need to calm down," and Valeria just kept pushing. Although, I guess Valeria's story doesn't really work because she doesn't really have a relationship with the man who isn't even her father yet. That's one of the things that annoys me the most here, is that Valeria expects Doom to acknowledge her claim right off the bat. And it's not like she didn't see how well that went with Sue, who is way more reasonable and compassionate than Dr. Doom. Even if Doom did believe her, that doesn't mean that he loves her yet. He isn't your father, girl. He is the power-bad ruler of an East European nation. Oh, and Copy Planet. Why do you want his love and acceptance so bad? That's weird. That's creepy. And overall, that's just some weak storytelling. To be fair, Valeria's role in this story isn't quite finished yet. We're only like a third of the way into this issue, so there is definitely still time for her to do something. In the time it took the Apostate to crush Doom's ship, the occupants, or at least our named characters, have survived. I'm not sure about that army that Doom mentioned earlier. They might all be dead. Sue's force field kept the rest of them safe long enough for Doom's teleporter to get them all out safely. The group is now in the American Southwest, inside of a massive stone temple. This is the same temple that Doom and Lancer found in Heroes Reborn Ashima, but this one is the original, where they found the reborn copy. Doom explains that this location houses the form of the Dreaming Celestial, better known as the Apostate. He then explains how the Apostate took over the Reborn Earth, and how that bodes ill for this Earth. This nigh omnipotent space god just spent like a year torturing a fake world, so imagine what he'll do to the real world if his full power is freed. Johnny gets in Doom's face over this though, like, "Oh, you're the guy who's gonna save the world? Why? So you can take it over, bro?" Both sides of this argue, then posture and strut about who is better suited to save the world. Divinity, annoyed at all of this, slips away. It believes that Doom should just have it absorb the four and add their strength to its own. Its attention elsewhere in the chamber, Divinity is the only person in the room to notice that the shadows are moving. It is then engulfed by pure darkness. Its cry of surprise alerts the others to the threat as the darkness flows into the room. Sue tries to block it with her force field, as she was able to successfully block Divinity earlier, but this time it doesn't work. The shadows swallow Sue, and then turn to the rest of the group. Two thin, shadowy figures with beady yellow eyes stare from its depths. Writhing tentacles of darkness sprout to life around them, hungry for more. The Human Torch and Shakti try to use their fire to free their comrades, but the added power of Sue's force field stops them both. In fact, she draws them both in, adding their bodies to the darkness. Mr. Fantastic tries to reach for them, hoping to pull them out before they're fully engulfed, but Dr. Doom hits him with a stun blast. Valeria is outraged by the attack, but Doom argues that fighting this watchdog is worthless. It's a distraction. Their true foe still lies ahead. No sense sacrificing their forces here. Doom gathers up the unconscious body of Mr. Fantastic, as Valeria volunteers to buy them time. Together with Valeria, they move deeper into the temple. As they do, the rest of the cast fights as a delaying tactic. One by one, they are all absorbed, until only the Thing and Lancer are left standing. They fight on bravely, because that's what heroes do. This is a nice, cool moment for both of them. It's super short-lived, but at least their contributions get noticed by the story. Doom, Valeria, and Reed reach the Apostate's resting chamber and are blown away by the sheer scale of everything. The 12 celestial statues lining the chamber slowly begin to change, turning from a celestial form into one of the captured heroes. Then the massive shadowy tentacles appears behind the group. Marvel Girl activates her force field, blocking the passage behind them. She tells the men that she will hold it as long as she can, although hopefully they won't need long. Doom comments that the girl might prove herself worthy of his name yet. Reed glares at him. Doom best makes sure that he is worthy of being her father. The two men then start scanning the pictograms that line the walls of the chamber. Reed briefly finds some images that match those that he has seen previously in the Chamber of the Ruined. Is that their origin? Did the Celestials test the ruined society and find it wanting? Was that what ruined them? Fascinating as that may be, Doom interrupts. What does it matter right now? They have 2 planets to save at the moment. Perhaps that should hold Reed's attention. As the 2 men continue to scan the wall, golden energy begins to crackle in front of Ashima's statue. It quickly coalesces into the form of the Apostate, and he reaches out as he talks. In the beginning there was thought, and thoughts led to dreams, and dreams led to his creation. He could shape all of existence back in those days, until his brethren cast him down, imprisoning him on Earth out of jealousy. But soon he will be free to shape the world again, as he does Reed, Doom, and Valeria now. The trio then go through a series of complete transformations, each one stranger and more painful than the last. They are all left reeling by the event, shaken to their very core. But the Apostate praises the fact that they're still standing at all. Even the other Celestials would have been rocked by such an assault. Tell you what, he'll offer them a deal. If they stand down now and agree to ally with him, he will make them his equals. They will be Celestials, in all but name. Reed pauses at this. Why offer them a deal at all if he is so close to accomplishing his goal? It must be scared of something that Reed and or Doom could still do. Reed then gestures to a series of massive levers set into the wall, and Doom was wondering when Reed would notice them. If they throw those levers, they should be able to imprison the apostate completely once again, but they have to activate them all at the same time. Doom states that there are only 2 men, though. Valeria is spent, and she can't possibly help them. He nods. Yes, this is a time for action. Dr. Doom then blasts Reed in the back. He turns to the apostate and says that he will accept the deal. The apostate looms over the tiny man. He suspected that Doom might take it. Only his hatred might outweigh all other potential concerns. Then it turns to Valeria, who is still struggling to hold back the darkness. She should surrender now. His victory is inevitable. "Never!" she shouts. The apostate stares. "Then you shall suffer." Doom steps in front of the Celestial, though. "No, she will not. That shall be your fate." Then he spins, using his personal force field to grab 2 of the switches. Mr. Fantastic had been making good use of Doom's distraction, and is already stretched out amongst several of the levers. He just needs to make it to the last few. But that's when Valeria's strength fails. The darkness pushes through, shoving Valeria off of her feet and into the grip of the apostate. It squeezes, wanting her to cry out in order to distract Reed and Doom. But she won't. If it's her life in exchange for the world, then so be it. The apostate then drops her into the puddle of darkness and boasts that he is now 1 step closer to freedom. Another statue transforms, this one into Valeria. Now it just has to capture Reed and Doom, and then it is free. As Reed stretches, the darkness begins to crawl along his length. He pushes on, though, struggling even as Doom begins to be caught up in it. His friends and family have risked their lives for their one chance to save everything. Even Doom is willing to sacrifice himself right now. Reed can't falter. He doesn't. As the switches are thrown, Ashima's statue turns back into flesh, calling out, "Traitor!" 12 beams of energy streak from the 12 statues, blasting into the apostate. He bellows in rage. The beams don't hurt him. That isn't their point, but he has been thwarted. As the energies begin to seal the apostate away once more, he reaches out for Doom and Reed, taking them both in hand. The dark shadows burn away in the bright light, freeing the Fantastic Four and Doom's commanders. Their statues crumble away, and the group gathers around behind Ashima. She stands near the edge of the energy, her hands manipulating it, shaping it. Sue shouts after her husband's status. Is he alive? Is he dead? Ashima can't answer that now. She can't risk letting the apostate free once more. She concentrates. The energy reaches its peak, and then the apostate is gone. The new binding has taken. The universe and both Earths have been saved. Sue rushes over to the pit now. What about Reed? What about her husband? The dust begins to settle, and Ashima turns. She couldn't afford to save either man. The apostate knew that. By taking Reed and Doom hostage, it knew that either it would wound those who defeated him, or their sentimentality would hold them back, and it would be able to escape once more. But Ashima finished the job. If either of the men survived, it was due to their own wits. The clattering of falling stones begins to echo in the chamber. There's movement as a figure rises from the rubble. And it's Doom. I gotta give some mad props to Chris Claremont before I tear this comic a new one. The man definitely knows how to sell me on a cliffhanger. Between the massive wave of reality last issue and now Dr. Doom appearing to be the only man standing after the binding of the apostate, that's great stuff. I keep buying these comics because of endings like that. So nice work there. The rest of this ending makes some interesting decisions. Let's take a look at 2 of the established things, the extra information on the Ruined, and Valeria's role in the story. The inclusion of the Ruined here is very strange. I thought that Claremont did the follow-up story to them in issue 20 because he was looking to close out their dangling plotline regarding Yvette still being superpowered. I figured that he was clearing the deck of Scott Lobdell-related plotlines so that he could focus on his own stuff. But this moment would indicate otherwise. There is no reason to connect the Ruined to the Celestials here. It would be one thing if Reed saw the Ruin's pictograms in the temple, and his history with them led to a solution for the apostate. But that isn't what happened. Claremont, through the use of Doom, tells Reed to focus on the task at hand. The Ruin aren't important right now, which I think is hilarious because this is Claremont getting distracted by a different plotline, but then Claremont yells at Claremont about focusing on the matter at hand. Like, keep your head in the game, man. So why include this line about the Ruined at all? The easiest answer is that Claremont genuinely does find them interesting. Perhaps if his run had gone on longer, the Fantastic Four would have encountered the Ruined again at some point. I would certainly have loved that. But I think that the scene is meant to serve more as an example of the difference between Reed and Doom. For Reed, the acquisition of knowledge is an act of joy in and of itself. He loves learning, not because it gets him something, but because he just loves to learn. For Doom, though, the acquisition of knowledge is about having more tools. Every new piece of information that he knows is a weapon, and it's just his job to figure out how best to use that weapon. I've mentioned before that Claremont is going to be exploring the differences between Reed and Doom during the final year of his Fantastic Four run, and we're continuing to see that idea set up here. Other than hinting at the idea thematically, though, I don't think that this story sets up that idea well. But before I get into that, let's get to my other complaint, and that's Valeria's role in all this. So now that the story is ended, I've got a better sense of Valeria's story, and I'm not impressed. As the character caught between the Fantastic Four and Dr. Doom, Valeria did nothing. She didn't inspire Dr. Doom to be a better man. She didn't choose the healthier Fantastic Family as her family unit, nor did she disappoint her father by making that decision because he doesn't care about her almost at all. She does sacrifice herself to stop the apostate, which is certainly a heroic move to do, but doing so only allows Doom and Reed to do what they were already doing anyway, which is completely ignore her. She was a non-entity in this story. She served the same basic role as collapsing the tunnel that the men entered this chamber through would have done. She slowed down the darkness. Yeah, that's right. Valeria serves the same story purpose as debris. She was there to block a hole. Whoop-de-doo. This ties back into my complaint about Claremont setting up an examination of Reed and Doom. Because Claremont has done a great job of setting up a lot of interesting ideas, but none of those ideas are getting explored well. Knowing that Year 3 is about to be examining how similar the two characters are, this issue needs to be about establishing how different they are. That Reed enjoys science because he just enjoys science, and that he loves his family, and that he's willing to risk his life in order to save not just the planet, but those 4 people specifically. Doom, by contrast, enjoys science because it's one more thing to serve him and his ambitions, and he will hurt anyone that he has to in order to accomplish his goals. And sure, those goals can be noble, such as saving the planet from a mad celestial, but doing so should either cost Doom personally or gain him some kind of upper hand on his enemies. Highlighting the differences between these men here would make the story that we're going to see moving forward much cleaner and easier to understand. But instead, this story plays into how similar the two of them are. Both men think that they're the world's best hope to stop this threat. Both men study the pictograms for answers, and they find the same answer. Both men work to throw the levers, and they do so without consulting each other verbally. These guys are so in sync that Reed understands that Doom blasted him in order to draw the apostate's attention to Doom, allowing Reed the freedom to stretch. And then, when Reed pulls the levers, he mentally hopes that Doom pulls his 2 levers because they need to be triggered all at once. This story, this single issue, highlights how utterly similar these two men think. And if you are telling that story here, then we don't need a whole year to explore it, making our upcoming storyline kinda pointless. Like Valeria being here. So let's look at it another way. Let's look at this as the final issue in an arc. Let's look at Fantastic Four issue 24, Heroes Reborn Doomsday, Ashima, Doom, and now issue 25 as an arc, because it's the closest Claremont has gotten so far, and it's fairly unsatisfying. Mr. Fantastic doesn't save the day without Doom, but allying with Doom and his brand of ruthlessness doesn't cost Mr. Fantastic anything either. Doom doesn't save the day without Mr. Fantastic, but he isn't humbled at all. He succeeded in saving the Reborn Earth, he succeeded in outmaneuvering the Apostate, and now he has succeeded in saving the regular Earth, too. Doom isn't the selfish, power-greedy villain that he is supposed to be. He's just kinda rude-ish. And it's not like Valeria is forced to choose between the man who will be her father someday or the family that has come to love her now, nor does she exist as a bridge between them, smoothing over any enmity the two sides have. From a personal characterization standpoint, this issue really drops the ball. And unfortunately, it does so on the basic plot as well, because there are still details here that I'm just not understanding. Reborn Earth was dropped into our reality on the other side of the sun from Earth, so why is it suddenly merging with Earth Classic? I know that Claremont is trying to pull the idea that merging the Earth is allowing the Apostate to act on Earth Classic, because it's now part of the dream state that the Reborn Earth existed as, but Ashima isn't powering the Reborn Earth anymore. It's not in a pocket dimension, it's just a real thing, as real as anything else. The idea that the Reborn Earth acted as a way for the Apostate to slip his bonds and find a partial way through to freedom is fine. I can get behind that. But this forced idea that the Earth Classic has to exist in that same dream state is contrived and ill thought out. The Apostate should be free to act, but only in dreams, and holy sh... No swearing! You know what actually could have solved that problem? I can't believe that I'm going to pitch this. The Ruined could have solved that problem. So here's the thing. The Apostate has woken from his banishment because of the creation of Reborn Earth, right? And now that the Reborn Earth is real, the Apostate shouldn't be able to affect it physically anymore. He is still free, but only able to influence dreams, yes? So, when Doom drops the Reborn Earth into reality, the Apostate has returned to Earth, but now he needs physical counterparts. He needs agents who can affect the world. He is looking for somebody to free his body, and so he contacts the Ruined, the last race that he would have known of, and they were last seen in French police custody, and then he feeds them dreams of power and glory and freedom and whatever. Maybe he can even feed them some extra power or make dream copies of their bodies like he did with Dorma in the Heroes Reborn Doom one-shot. The Ruined can then go to the temple, and when the Fantastic Four and Doom arrive to stop the Apostate, they can fight the Ruined, and that would leave only Doom, Reed, and Valeria free to solve the problem. So then they're scanning the walls, looking for a solution, but then Valeria sees that her father is working on something else while his back is turned to Reed. She asks him about it, innocently enough at first, but discovered that he's building a device to absorb the Apostate's energy or something like that. He'll stop the Apostate, and he will save the Earth, and in doing so gain the power necessary to make his every dream a reality. Valeria is appalled by this, but this is when the Apostate makes his appeal to Doom. I'll feed you power now, just like the Ruined, and you can rule the Earth once I'm freed. I'm gonna take the rest of the universe, bro. Dr. Doom would then take that deal, get supercharged, and start fighting with Mr. Fantastic. But Valeria jumps in here, confronting the worst aspects of her father, both physically and emotionally. The Ruined could then bust in, having taken care of the rest of the Fantastic Four and Doom's commanders, and they could be prepared to finish off Mr. Fantastic, but Reed then has to make an emotional plea to them. The Ruined were humans once. No swearing. You can even play up the idea that Qatar used to be Arliss, the model who flirted with Johnny Storm. She isn't some monster who wants to take over the world. She isn't a killer. She loves fashion and culture and good food and sure, handsome men like Johnny. Maybe she even loves him. And Reed's plea makes it. He and the Ruined would then spread out, preparing to activate the switches, but there are only 6 of the Ruined and there are 12 levers. Reed can stretch out, grabbing, let's say, 4 more, but that only gives them control of 10 of the levers. They need 2 more. And so it would come down to Doom and Valeria. So as those two are fighting, Valeria is trying to talk Doom down, and he is just thrilled by the newfound power he has. She keeps trying to tell stories about when she was a little girl, appealing to their shared humanity, but that isn't the part of Doom that he has ever valued. And this version of Doom honestly doesn't have an emotional connection to Valeria at all. So then Reed shouts for her to appeal to his better nature, his pride. And so she does, challenging this particular course of action. Is this really what Doom wants? To be the lackey of another agent? And even if he is given phenomenal cosmic power, what does it matter if he didn't earn it by himself? By this point, Doom would have Valeria on the floor, beaten like she is just barely deflecting his blows with her force field. And she whispers something along the lines of like, "My father wouldn't bow to a god, much less a failed one." And Doom's fists would be raised over his head, crackling with energy, and he'd yell out and he'd strike the floor instead. And then he would help Valeria up, and they would throw the switches, and everything else would be, and then it would end. It'd be fine. And you know, the process that we're shown for binding the apostate, again, is never really explained in the issue either. Like, I was able to sell it to you folks by filling in the gaps, honestly, and making an educated guess, but it is never outright explained. And even those switches are honestly a stupid plot device. Clearly the Celestials built this place to house the apostate's trapped form. The switches are just intended as a fail-safe device to be thrown if the apostate ever breaks free and then rebind him, and that's cool. But if the Celestials used their power to bind the apostate before the switches existed, why wouldn't they just use their power to bind him again? Why do they need the switches? And then why would they build switches if the apostate is able to break free, but then there's no warning system to let them know about it? And then if that's the case even, why would they make the levers so large? The existence of the switches would imply that the Celestials were preparing so that a race other than them could stop the apostate, like, I don't know, maybe whatever kind of race ended up growing on Earth after they left it. But if that's the case, then why did the Celestials make the levers so large? The Celestials can alter their size at will. They don't have to be giants, and almost no other race in the Marvel Universe is that tall. Like, the giants of Asgardian myth are the only race off the top of my head that are already big, and even then, they still aren't celestial big. So as a fail-safe device, the switches are stupid. I also don't understand why Ashima was forced into her own statue, or why she was even necessary to help bind the apostate at all. Remember, Ashima didn't come with the temple. She was sent to the Reborn Earth to pick up Franklin Richards, and then she chose to stay behind to help it. She isn't like a living dream, she's a real person. So the Celestial Switch method was put in place without her added power in mind to begin with. If anything, the addition of her might should have actually allowed her to rebind the apostate even more easily, allowing her to save Reed and Doom. Why was the darkness, whatever that was, helping the apostate? When I first saw it, I thought that it was going to be the 616 counterpart of Divinity, since Divinity came from the Reborn Earth. But if that's the case, why is Divinity a sentient being and the darkness here is just this, like, primal hungry force? I can't say that this darkness is an aspect of the apostate's power because he can only affect dreams and that darkness was a physical force. It was real. So that doesn't make sense to me either. It also just occurred to me that the apostate could also have been getting to Doom's commanders through their dreams in an attempt to turn them against him, so you could maybe have used them instead of the Ruined if you didn't want to clutter up the narrative here with sudden throwbacks to old plotlines. After all, it's not like the majority of the Fantastic Four really do anything here, other than fight the Commanders. And Lancer doesn't really do anything, and she's been a pretty big part of Doom's story in the Heroes Reborn issues. And the Wakandan Prince is nowhere to be seen. I thought that maybe Claremont was introducing him in Heroes Reborn Doom so that he could, play some kind of subtle background role in this story, but no, he's just a total non-entity. He could never have been introduced, and nothing would have changed. This, not quite a story arc, was getting there. I'll give Claremont that. This is perhaps the closest that he has come to a structured arc so far, even if the story does take some unconventional routes to get through that arc. Zigging into Doom's narrative to explore the greater threat of the Apostate is a strange move, but then Claremont zags us back into the Fantastic Four in order to resolve it, and honestly that works for me. I do think that Heroes Reborn, Ashima, Doom, and Fantastic Four issue 25 all kind of share the same basic problem. Claremont spends so long introducing his ideas that he has to rush their endings, and we just kind of see everything get smashed up and then it ends. I don't know if his intent is to string us along into the next issue, where maybe he's planning on explaining things better, but I honestly don't think so, because he never really does any cleanup work like that throughout the entirety of this run. The ending of Heroes Reborn Doom is just as vague as I left it. And if anything, the pieces of that narrative that Claremont did pick up, like the Reborn Earth being in the 616 reality now, don't make any sense anyways. Now, I have to say, where this book does fail from a story perspective, it's great visually. Salvador Larroca, Inker's art Thibert in Pennington, and the colors by Liquid are amazing. We get tons of full-page splashes at the beginning, like when Valeria pops in on Lancer, or when Doom reveals himself for the first time. They're gorgeous. There's a few two-page spreads as well, one of which is used to just introduce Doom's flagship, and the other is when the Commanders get introduced, so those look gorgeous. I love the look of the Black Darkness when absorbs Sue and Divinity, those beady-eyed shadow forms look genuinely creepy to me. The shadow tentacles don't work as well, as they're rendered like actual tentacles and not just shadowy tendrils. This makes the tentacles look like real things, while the rest of the shadows look like an amorphous liquid shadow, so that's just kind of a weird difference. But I am still impressed in general, because Larroca has drawn 22 issues of the Fantastic Four in a row, and this issue had 16 more pages than normal, and they all work. If anything, Larroca's artwork has gotten cleaner and more impressive with time, and that ain't easy. There are artists these days who can barely do 6 issues of time on a book before they have to duck out of it, but here, we've got Larroca banging out almost 2 years of comics uninterrupted. That's fantastic. Pun intended. What an issue. I didn't intend to pitch y'all my take on it. That honestly came out of nowhere. I did not have that in the original script. I forgot how fun doing that can be. Anyways, this is where I'm going to pause my breakdown of Fantastic Four Volume 3. We've got about 7 more episodes to go, which will consist of 7 more issues of Fantastic Four, a 3-issue Doom limited series, a graphic novel, and maybe another Doom limited series if I feel like it. We'll see. That series doesn't really fit in with this collection, but it's also kind of the sequel to the first Doom series that I mentioned, so I'm kind of just going to leave that one up to the whims of fate. If I feel like doing it, I'll do it, or if you ask me to do it, I'll do it, but otherwise, I'm not 100% sold on covering that one yet. In the meantime, we have something else to finish. There are only 5 issues left of Superman's Our Worlds at War crossover, and I am eager to wrap this one up. Largely because I've just been waiting to write these episodes before I added them into my Young Justice collection, and I can finish that run, and that whole series of books has just been sitting out waiting for me. I might do a post-Our Worlds at War wrap-up episode, something just to explore my thoughts on the total event and what my entire Our Worlds at War collection looks like, but we'll see. On the one hand, I kind of want to continue to break away from Claremont's Fantastic Four for a bit, but on the other hand, I want to get that one done. So much of this year has just been wrapped up in Fantastic Four Volume 3 and then the Superman event, and I'm kind of just ready for something else. So let's do something else. Join me in a week for Comic Book Breakdown episode 13.6, Our Worlds at War, Part 6. Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.